Hey guys, so I just wanted to do a quick voiceover on this video just because I did this during the day while Hayes was napping and did not want to waste a bunch of time talking and also making the video that much longer. So this is a mid-century modern piece I got at our store. It was in one of our vendors' booth and it was pretty beaten up. The top had a lot of water damage on it, so the varnish or the sealer that they had over the stain was starting to flake back. I'm just showing you what products I'm using right now. I used one 120 milliliter can of sample paint in Chicago gray to use on this whole piece. So that's all I used on it for paint. And then I also used her small wax brush, her small paintbrush, and her small flat brush too to paint on. And then, of course, sealed it in clear wax. So what I'm going to do is basically rough this top up. I usually don't do this on pieces, especially ones that are going to be distressed and have that chippy look. But this is a mid-century modern piece, so I wanted a flat finish. I wanted something that went with the bones of the actual end table or the style, the design of the end table. So I wanted to be sure to get any of that roughness down, and also that varnish or sealer that they had put over the top of the stain was flaking off. So I wanted to be sure to get rid of that. So I'm just going to sand it in the areas where it was really damaged on top. I'm not even messing with the other areas. And then on the feet, it is also damaged with water spots and just the varnish flaking off. So, and I want to stain them, so I'm going to sand them down to the wood. So I'm going to basically just take that top sealer coat off, and I'll show you here what I'm doing. So now I'm going to measure because I want to leave part of the leg showing. I'm going to measure off and put tape around the bottom, and then I will come back and I will stain that with Annie's dark wax, but that will be at the end of the video. So I'm using one sample can of Chicago gray to do this project. I just kind of shake it up, or you can mix it, either one. It's whatever you prefer. In the middle of this, I started to paint and notice, oh, hey, I have to tape off the middle section because I wanted to leave those wood. So I went in the middle of painting and did that. That's one thing I love about Annie's paint. It's so forgivable that, you know, you don't have to be really adamant about what you're doing. You can take off for a minute and do something else if you forget something, because that happens in projects. But anyways, without my rambling. So I'm just kind of slapping it on. You can do a really smooth finish with this if you want. You can sand it in between coats, but I just kind of was putting it on and not really being real smooth and delicate about it. I did use her roller brush to get in between the two tiers because I don't like the handles of the brush knocking the other side of the wood. And then I used her small flat brush to get into the details, which is really good for that. But I love her round paintbrush. They hold so much paint in those bristles, so you're not having to constantly re-dip your brush and continue painting every time. You can just really get it on there, get it in between grooves and textures and everything. So and I'll use the roller brush again to get in the center of this. And usually on her first coat, I put it on full coat coverage, or it's a one coat coverage. But on my second coat, sometimes I water it down. And usually in between projects, I will wrap up my brush in a wet paper towel and a plastic sack just to preserve it. So you're not having to constantly wash out your brushes. You can just kind of cheat and leave them to the side so they don't dry out. So in between letting paint dry, I can't just sit there and watch paint dry. I have to do a project. So this was a mother-in-law project. She had handed this to me and wanted some paint on it. So I thought, why not include it in this? And then my son woke up because I was doing this in the middle of the day in my dining room. So yeah, so I had to stop after this. And we had supper that night with my in-laws. So I just basically folded up there on the dining table, folded up my little sheet that I had laying down and put it all in one little area, and we ate, and then I unfolded it again. That's one thing I love most about doing these projects is how quick they are, and also like very little supplies are required, so you're not having a huge cleanup job. So after supper, I unfolded, set everything back out. I did notice that because I had sanded the top of the end table, the varnish off, some of the stain was coming through. And that happens on any paint. If you have varnish on the top that has been flaking off, the stain will naturally just bleed through paint. So you just have to basically seal that down. And I usually don't do the shellac before I paint. Some people do, but I just find it unnecessary. It's more time consuming when you do that. So I just just paint basically, and if something starts to bleed through, then I'll go back over with some shellac and just kind of spot treat it. And it dries really quickly. It doesn't take a lot. You just do a thin coat. And I'm just using a cheap little chip brush that we sell at our store. And I'll just throw this away at the end when I get done because there's no sense in washing it out. But you can get shellac at any of your hardware stores. It does expire, so I have a big gallon of it because I needed it one time, and the only option I had was a gallon. So this is what I had. So, but they have smaller sizes that you can use for projects and keep for longer without having to spend a bunch of money on it. So now I'm finally getting to do that little small project as that shellac is drying. And I'll go back and show you the finished project, but I used Old White on that little sewing drawer. And then this is my second coat. I'm just going over and touching up where some of the paint kind of showed the wood through, didn't get it all the way covered. And I just touch it here and there. I don't do a full coat of paint all over the place. So there's no need to it because it's so thick. So this is my second coat on the sewing drawer box, and I'm going to distress this one, so I'm not real careful about how I'm putting it on. Next, I'm peeling off the paint or the tape. There's kind of the middle of the project picture. And then now I'm going to wax. So the reason you wax is her paint is porous, and I say this every time on my videos, but her paint's porous, so anything that you put on top of it is going to settle into it. So you need to put something to seal over the top of it. So her wax works really, really good. It's just like using hand lotion on your hands. So your hands being the paint, the lotion being the wax. You put lotion on your hands basically, and your hands absorb that. Same concept with the paint. You just kind of spread it around, the wax around on the paint, and it'll absorb what it can, and then you'll take a lint-free cloth and just wipe back the excess. And waxing doesn't have to be a real hard job. You're just kind of using your wrist, not a big real motion of your arms and stuff. And it's a two-handed job to me. It's a wax on, and then you can kind of feel where you've missed. And then you just kind of hit places, because it is mattifying when you have just the paint, and then the wax brightens up the paint a bit. So you can kind of feel where you've missed pieces or areas of waxing. And I really love waxing. I have painted a lot of furniture. I used to stain, I stained some big projects with varnish and polyurethane and stuff back in the day, and waxing is the easiest. There's very little smell to it, and I love how you can spot treat with it. So like if I hit a piece with something else, like I get dirt or something on it, I can just take that fresh wax and rub it back off. That is very forgiving to me, and it's durable, so it seeps into the paint, so it just keeps hardening with that paint over time. And the longer you let it sit and let it last, the harder it will get to scratch off. So I'm just taking off the tape that was around the bottom of the legs, and I'm putting it back on top of the paint because I want to use dark wax on the wood part, so just to deepen it, because they were a little bit paler. The legs were paler than the centerpiece detail, so I just took a cheap little chip brush, which is what I usually use whenever I dark wax, and I just started going over the legs. And for my lint-free cloths, you can actually get them at Sam's or like really anywhere. They're just a lint-free, like Scott's towels. But you want to make sure you use lint-free. Even some old cotton t-shirts will still have lint in them and leave fuzz on your piece. So you just want to be sure you're using something that's lint-free. And as you go, your paper towel will like absorb so much wax. So just make sure you turn the piece every which way, the paper towel every which way. So here's the finished product. I was pretty actually excited about it because I'm not a mid-century modern person. I love the chippy rustic stuff, but I don't know, we had some chairs that were mid-century modern, so I thought these would pair perfectly together with each other. So yeah, here's the finished piece. It was really easy. It maybe took me an hour and a half to actually paint the whole thing.